I thought Sherrone Moore was awful on Saturday against Oklahoma, his alma mater. The usage of the timeouts in the second half at the beginning of the fourth quarter is just some of the worst clock management you will possibly see. It's 2nd and 1. He doesn't like the defensive alignment. Timeout. Burns timeout number 1 very early on into the fourth quarter. On a 2nd and 1. Still, we're going to have another play on the 3rd and 1, even if you didn't convert the first down. So he calls the timeout there. 2 plays later, he calls the timeout because his team's not about to be ready. His team's about to get a delay a game. All right. Guess you had to call one there, right? And suddenly Michigan has 1 timeout left. They don't even end up using it. That was the first thing that really got me going. The second thing was the play action and the use of the pistol formation, the short shotgun. Like, man, it just wasn't working. Haynes had 18 carries for 50 yards if you take away the 70-yard rush that he had. It wasn't very effective. And then the play action game itself, Bryce Underwood was 2 for 9, 63 yards, a 56 NFL passer rating. Without the play action, I'm not saying this is great, but it's certainly better, 7 for 15, 79 yards, and a 62.9 NFL passer rating. So many screens, so much play action. By the time Bryce Underwood would hand the ball, like fake the handoff for the play action, he'd turn around, look down the field, and he was already under pressure. Like, it just wasn't working from the very beginning, whether it was running the football or the play action. None of it was working, and it felt like they were hesitant to let him throw the ball down the field. All these screen passes, 5 of them to be exact, for -5 yards. The majority of his passes were less than 9 yards. It just felt like they didn't trust him, which I made the point before the show or before the weekend, like, yeah, they shouldn't have to lean on Bryce Underwood all that much. But by the time the third quarter rolled around, it was pretty apparent their game plan wasn't working, and they needed to shift from something, and they get that 75-yard run from Justice Haynes, which I'm not saying like hurt them at the end of the day, but then they just kept going back to the run and to the run and to the run out of that pistol formation. And outside of that one play where he took it to the house right out of halftime, it just wasn't working, and there was no adjustments made by this Michigan team. So I ask everyone, is Sherrone Moore your guy? If you're a Michigan fan, are you all in on Sherrone Moore defending him? Because I honestly have no idea if Michigan fans like this guy. I don't think there's any like 1 or 2 reasons to point to of like, yes, this is absolutely the person to be the head coach of the program. There's a world where 3 weeks go by and all of a sudden we're like, I don't really feel all that confident in him. I told you before the season that I was kind of indecisive on whether or not I thought Sherrone Moore was the guy long term. And based on the fact that they didn't cover their spread against New Mexico and didn't look all that dominant outside of Bryce Underwood. And then they got kind of not mollywopped, but they were never in control of that game versus Oklahoma. Now we get to see what this team looks like without Sherrone Moore. And what if they just flat out dominate CMU? They run them up, 50-point win. I'm not saying that or wishing that or, former Chippewa right here. But what if they just flat out dominate? Then what if they just show up to Nebraska the following week and destroy them without Sherrone Moore? And all of a sudden their 2 best games of the year are without their head coach. This is a lot of hypotheticals here. But I'm just trying to play out every scenario in my head. Do they struggle without him? Do they look better without him? Is it the same team? Because one thing we do know is that this guy is going to have some sort of immunity with this Michigan program for one reason. I guess 2 reasons. He's beaten Ohio State twice. And they'd rather fight the NCAA and die on the ship and defend their guy than admit that we don't really like this guy. They'd rather just fight the NCAA. They think they're out to get him, so they're just going to defend Sherrone Moore. Even with the suspension next year, they're going to back their guy and argue with the NCAA until the end of time that he shouldn't have this last suspension, this last game where he's suspended heading to Germany next year. But I don't know if there's actual real evidence that he's the guy, other than the fact that he beat Ohio State. And if that's all it takes,
that's
then
pretty good evidence,
then so be it. So be it, yeah. If that's all it takes, then so be it. But what about the other 11 games? I think we're all just kind of, I'm shrugging my shoulders. I don't know yet. I don't know. Because let's just face it, the first 2 games for Michigan, I mean, they've moved back in the rankings twice. As much as the AP poll is meaningless, they've moved backwards in that poll twice in the first 2 weeks of the season.
I think you're cutting the question off short.
Okay.
Is Sherrone Moore the guy? How about is Sherrone Moore the guy for Bryce Underwood? Because in that game, you're sitting there thinking, like, why are they playing this game like it's still Jack Tuttle at quarterback? You know, why are they not acting like they have this 5-star generational quarterback at the helm? Let him be the 5-star. Let him play like the guy you recruited him to be. It felt like they were doing what Ben Johnson was doing with Caleb Williams last night, just shelling him. Whereas on the other side, Kevin O'Connell's trusting J.J. McCarthy. Even though it might not work out at first, you're going to let things play out. Like, it was frustrating to me as a neutral fan watching this game. Like, they have Bryce Underwood, man, and they're just in a game against another high-powered offense and a good quarterback in John Mateer. Like, I was just frustrated in the fact that I get that Michigan has had an identity under Jim Harbaugh, under Sherrone Moore. I completely understand that. But those teams didn't have Bryce Underwood, man. It's frustrating to see how the offense isn't really built to his needs and just letting him make plays because we know he's capable of doing it.
Very rarely was he just lined up in the shotgun, hey, let's just two-step drop.
Let him go to work,
Let him go to work. It's all this pistol. It's all this play action. It's all this stuff to scheme up a run game, which also is ineffective. I hated all of it, and they wouldn't adjust. It was the same thing over and over and over again. Justice Haynes picking up 2 yards. And yes, his box score looks great because he had the 75-yard run on the halftime. But between the timeouts and the lack of adjustments and the lack of offensive explosion, it was just really frustrating by the end of the day to where I'm sitting here like, I don't know if Sherrone Moore is the guy here. And I'm honestly not screw it. I am excited to see what this team looks like without him there. Like, I want to see what they look like with him there versus without him there. Because if they just, like, let's just face it, they haven't had the best 2 games.
Right.
They haven't lived up to the expectations in either game. Bryce Underwood did in week 1. Michigan as a whole, that game was like relatively close in the 4th quarter. Saturday against Oklahoma, never really in full control of that game. So what if they just come out here and play their 2 best games of the year? Then what happens? Then we have to start having really tough and awkward conversations about Sherrone Moore, asking ourselves if he's the guy. And let's just face it. You move off of Sherrone Moore, who knows if Bryce Underwood's sticking around because that's the guy who got him in the building. So now you're in this like carousel of who's in more control, who has more power, who's the decision maker here. Is the coach the right guy for the quarterback? But we need to keep the quarterback because that's obviously the priority. It feels like Michigan's in a much messier situation than I initially realized to begin the season.
Man, how much a weekend can change.
What do you mean?
Going into the weekend, crowning Michigan as the national champions, and then all of a sudden, it's fire Sherrone Moore.
No,
Bryce Underwood's going to transfer.
You're putting all these words into my mouth. I didn't say any of those things.
No, I know. It's just, but you get what you do get the point I'm making, though, right? Like how much this game really did matter as far as how you view a lot of different things. This Michigan team long term, Sherrone Moore long term. Like it was. There was a lot of question marks that weren't necessarily answered this weekend, but it almost just extended how long things are going to be in question for.
989-837-6125. Michigan fans, I need to know whether or not you believe in Sherrone Moore as the guy after this Oklahoma game. And with him gone, and how do you say this person's name? Biff Poggi?
Biff Poggi.
Biff Poggi. Now the interim head coach for the next 2 weeks. Are you excited? Like, are you happy that Sherrone Moore is gone? Because I don't think the first 2 weeks have necessarily been impressive. If you're a Michigan fan, you got to be able to admit that, to say the least. So what's your reaction to this Oklahoma game? And do you think Sherrone Moore is the guy here for the Wolverines? 989-837